is a historical novel set in the Victorian world. And Victorian women have always fascinated me, and I wanted to go, if I could, more deeply into what was hidden and private in their lives. And I felt that I got glimpses of this from especially diaries and memoirs of the time. So things like sexual passion and lesbian love, how Victorian marriage worked behind closed doors, and most especially perhaps, which I hadn't really expected as I started to write, themes like women's experience of childbearing and especially child loss, with which most or all families had to deal with at some stage. But the centre of the novel is certainly the crisis of faith. So I open the novel in 1860 for two reasons. It's the year after the publication of Darwin's Origin of Species, which of course caused seismic convulsions in the intellectual and religious Victorian world, but also splintered into every corner of people's lives. But 1860 is also important to my novel in that it's also the year after the Great Awakening or religious revival hit West Wales and took root there and moved steadily eastwards towards England. And my central characters live in Salisbury or near Salisbury in a fictional town. And they are the Pentecost sisters, orphaned daughters of a nonconformist minister, and now in their mid-20s. And both in their ways sassy and anomalous women, struggling in the net of the great revolutionary questions of the time. And of course they're on the margins of the cultural and intellectual world, but the reverberations of feminism and agnosticism and this challenge to all the certainties and the hierarchies, social hierarchies, which had been taken to some degree for granted, are breaking down around them and setting them at one another's throats. As I said, it's set in an imagined town or village, Chauncey, near my mother's home in Salisbury, and I wanted to set it against the ancient backdrop of the vast rolling plains, the Salisbury Plain, where Neolithic and Bronze Age man settled, and the Romans came and went, and they all left shattered monuments and mysteries behind them. And that area holds so many secrets of the past, the henges and the barrows, the grave goods, and of course the fossil record in that chalky area. So Stonehenge, Avebury, Old Sarum, these are important places in my novel's journey. And that area reaches right back into geological time, so it's against that immense vista of time and space that the story plays out. And importantly for me, it's all the action takes place under the great honey-coloured spire of Salisbury Cathedral, which dominates the whole skyline. Victorian women are a very complex phenomenon. If you think about it, they're excluded from the vote, from public office, from the ministry, from university education. If they marry, they'll be at the mercy of the laws that made it impossible for them to own property unless, of course, a settlement was made on them. And I've tried to go to the heart of this policing of women, especially through medical intervention, that if it saw you as heretical, could treat you as a heretic, as an hysteric. So these are women who suffer as kind of twisting by contradictory pressures, and they're antagonistic to each other in all sorts of ways, but they're also profoundly bonded in sisterly love. And obviously, being kin, they are not unlike one another in their differences. And at one point, Beatrice, Pentecost, fears that I am becoming Anna. So Beatrice, the elder, is a strict Calvinist. She's head of her household, she's masterful and needy, and she's fun-loving, and yet she's rigid and struggling with sexual jealousy. As a child, she's a victim of this troubling, paedophilic seeming interest that older males in that period are often recorded and innocently record themselves as feeling towards towards young people who are no more than children. And one thinks there maybe of Mary Benson, the amazing, scintillating lesbian wife of the guy who became the Archbishop of Canterbury, and who kind of moulded and shaped and formed her from very early age. And also I thought of Ruskin and his very iffy passion for very young girls, and well, there are various that one could bring in, and I've placed that in my narrative of Beatrice to, I hope, interesting effect. Anna is more modern in appearance. Her rebellious instincts carry her to ask the crucial questions about faith and creation, and she takes up with the free-thinking and charismatic intellectual Miriam Sala, to Beatrice's horror. Anna's a passionate amateur of archaeology and zoology, and she loves fossil collecting, and many people, many women, middle-class women, actually did this. She's very aware of nature read in tooth and claw. So like Emily Bronte, she's aware of this brutality of nature as a predatory system of destruction. And many thinking people were well aware of this before Darwin and Wallace. And like Emily Bronte, I also characterise her as a writer, or in some ways a writer manqué, with her own passionate truth to tell.